Hi, welcome to this channel on magnetic energy technology principles applications. This video is about like natural disasters and the consciousness, and then I'm going to throw in morphogenetic water in this because it relates and it's a great example of like how consciousness is going to change. So I've been talking about the potential natural disasters that could be on tap and that could be coming in. They could start actually really soon. And so there's always this play that happens with the global consciousness and then consciousness beyond, and then natural disasters and how they play out and the timing of how they play out and everything else. So the goal here from a higher consciousness point of view around our planet and then beyond, and all the support that we're getting everywhere, the goal here is to raise consciousness on our planet. That's a huge goal right now, and there's a lot going on to work on that and everything. So there is an opportunity for humanity and our level of consciousness to prevent and really mitigate most natural disasters. And I'll give you an example of how that could take place. If Hawaii is really the first domino, and the volcanic activity and everything that could be coming, and it starts this whole process. So there's always like this pressure building, especially when it comes to volcanoes, earthquakes, and then there's a transfer of energy that triggers like all kinds of hurricanes, tornadoes, and everything. So the humans have the ability, especially in mass consciousness, to influence those events by basically having a different way to channel that built up energy or that pressure. So humans, especially at a mass consciousness level, have the ability to make that pressure essentially go away, or to transmute that pressure in any situation, whether it's a volcanic eruption, an earthquake, or even when it comes to hurricanes and tornadoes, etc., etc. And so that's now at our current level of consciousness, we're under the illusion of separation. So it's very difficult for everyone to come together to do that. Now, if we could get millions and millions of people on board, we could pretty much stop any natural disaster that's coming. Now given that, if humanity got to the point, and we will get to the point where we start feeling interconnectivity with each other, and we start feeling basically our connection to universal consciousness, our connection to beings outside of this world, and to each other and to the planet, we will come together and we will be able to absolutely change nature and how we interact with it and how it interacts with us. And so there's always that possibility that certain events could be altered or changed within a set parameter, within certain boundaries. And that's hopefully, I'm still kind of hoping that there's some way to change these event paths that I've seen. But I do want everyone to know, even just from my own little perspective and this little channel, that everything that happens is happening for a higher purpose. There's no question about that. And if anything were outside of the boundaries or the parameters that are allowable, beings would 100% step in and change the events. And so they would stop, and they have done this many, many times. They would stop certain volcanic eruptions. They would stop certain earthquakes. They would stop all these things if they were outside of the parameters and they weren't part of the path right now to raise consciousness, which is a huge priority for the higher level beings on our world and then beyond. That is kind of the number one priority. And so everything that happens now is part of an event series or event paths that will lead to higher consciousness. Now, part of what's on tap is morphogenetic water, and that's what it will be called. And so morphogenetic water is this incredible example of how humanity will interact with the elements and interact with nature and interact with everything around us. And water will be one of the very first things that we are able to do that with. And so you're looking at this combination of water and consciousness, and the interaction that consciousness has with water going to a whole nother level. And so what does that look like? It will change things like the etheric flow rate in water. And so we will be able to modify that flow rate and enhance it. It will become more intense, which then, as our own etheric flow rate becomes more intense, our energetic field becomes stronger, the energetic field of water becomes stronger, we connect with it, and then we can change things like the molecular integrity of the water or the molecular formulation of water. And that's really important because that allows us to modify things like the temperature of the water, the magnetic field or the polarizations of water, and to make them stronger or weaker as the case may be, and really even the velocity of motion of water. So we can change basically the formulation of water and like the density of water and how it interacts with nature, how it interacts with us as human beings, and really the shape, even like the shape of water. So morphogenetic water will be absolutely predominant in the future, and as humanity interacts more with water, we have this sacred relationship with water. This will be like water forming into the vortices, and I've talked about this in other videos, and basically a tool for interdimensional travel, for free energy, for communication, all of these things. And that morphogenetic water is a combination of water and consciousness, and that is one of the ways that humanity could, for example, modify like a tsunami, and or modify like water spouts, or anything that has to do with like tides and water and the flow of water, the severity of water, how it impacts in natural disasters. So that's really coming in our future, our ability to do that. And so it's really important that we start to go through these consciousness modifications and up leveling of our consciousness, so that our interaction and with water and like morphogenetic water will be a huge first step in how we then interact with the forces of nature through consciousness, the elements that we interact with through consciousness. And then mass consciousness, as we come together in global consciousness, we will tune into what is necessary, what is needed, and what needs to be modified or changed according to a higher level of awareness, a universal consciousness, not from an ego perspective. There will be no room whatsoever for ego in this process. It's very much about tuning into the universal mind, tuning into the universal network and higher consciousness, universal consciousness, planetary consciousness, and what's intended at that level, and then working with that to make sure that unfolds. And that becomes like we raise our level of stewardness, if you want to call it stewards of this planet and everything. So that, just a quick video on that, and that's where it's coming. And then we'll see what happens with the events as they could unfold. But that's hopefully there will be some level of conscious interaction that will mitigate some of the effects of these things. But if it doesn't, it's still, this is all being allowed or being supported for the ultimate goal of higher consciousness, and for really leading to the heart path of humanity, living from the heart, and all those cool things that so many people talk about and I've talked about in so many videos. And you can send in any questions and comments that you have, and I'll see you again next time.